Greetings, Ventures. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, and welcome back to Cut Content and Review for DanMachi Season 3, Episode 10. And on this episode, I'm kind of mixed on it. It started off really well. I really liked how they adapted the first half, and then the second half happened. And again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but because they only have 12 episodes to work with, a lot of stuff is getting cut, altered, or changed, but again, in my eyes, that's not an excuse, because again, things could have been planned better, but I will clarify that later on in the video. Anyway, let's just get started with it. This is episode 10, covering volume 11, which is the last novel in the Xenos arc. It covers about 82 pages worth of content, but some of that is being condensed, some of it's being skipped, and a portion of it is being kept for next episode. Hopefully they don't skip the entirety of that fight. But anyway, into the start of the episode itself. Now, just like the light novel, the first scene is in the guild. A lot of the guild workers are exhausted because of the past few days, and they're finally getting a tiny moment of peace. And you see Misha in the scene, but in the light novel there's a conversation that takes place before Aina explodes, and Misha asks her team leader, why exactly is Bell getting all this blame when it should have been put onto Xenos Familia? And he basically says, well, Bell kind of represented a bit of hope to the adventurers because he won the war game, was known as a little rookie, and was seen as an inspiration, and now due to recent events he betrayed those expectations. So someone that everyone had their eye on suddenly just did something terrible in their eyes, like opposing them, attacking them. He was attacking people in the streets, trying to get them away from Wine, as you remember from episode 8. And then you have those scenes when Bell is walking on Daedalus Street last episode, looking at all the damage that was done. It's really hard not to associate that damage with Bell, because he's a known entity that's a big part of what happened. But as you can see, Aina kind of explodes. She's angry at Bell for not even coming once to her after their little confrontation in the previous episode. And I'm glad they kept the back talk that Aina had, where she said, hey, if me leaving causes a problem in the guild, maybe there's a problem with the way things are being run. And when Aina meets Hermes, it's a tiny bit different. Originally, you saw in last episode how Bell and the rest of Hestia Familia were already making their way to their various locations. Originally, Bell was supposed to stay in the Hestia Familia home and be the last one to leave, and that way the people that are watching Bell are still at Hestia Familia's home, waiting for him to come out, while the other Hestia Familia members can make their various ways to where they need to be for this whole operation. And then, when Bell comes out, that's when they start following him. So as Bell leaves Hestia Familia, he meets Hermes on his way out, and Hermes kind of wishes him good luck on whatever's about to happen. Bell leaves, and he spots a silhouette approaching the Familia home, but doesn't really stay to see who it is. And it's actually Aina, like, knocking on the gates to Hestia Familia, and Hermes goes and talks to her. And you get the same kind of talk between the two, where Hermes tells Aina where Bell is heading, and also gives Aina that bracelet to give to Bell, which she fails to do later on in the episode. Now, I said I liked the majority of the first half of this episode's adaptation, though there's one line that Ai says in the light novel that they took out that I wish they kept in, because it just humanizes Ai a bit more, because she says, if someone has to stop Bell, I want to be the one to do it. And she doesn't say that in the anime. She's basically kind of all robotic to Finn in that instance, like, I will stop him if he does something. And if you guys are curious on how that map works that Hestia and Haruhime are using, that's the map that Hestia got from Oranos that Fells originally drew up years and years ago. And it kind of works like the Marauders map from Harry Potter, if you're familiar with that. But basically, they can keep track of the locations of actual people going across the map, but they can only track people if they actually donate some of their blood. So each of the Hestia Familia members donate some of their blood so they can be monitored on the map, and also the Xenos as well. The way they got the Xenos blood is by using the owl that Fells has, but they could not get blood samples from Fells or Gross because Fells is just all bones, and Gross is actually just made of stone. And this next scene that comes up is one of my favorites in Volume 11. A lot of the light novel readers like myself wanted to see this adapted, and they did actually do this one justice, and it's a big part of the reason why I like the first half of this episode. And it's, of course, when Belle is meeting up with Naza, Ryu, Aisha, Aina, all while Eyes is just watching all of it happen. And I love it. I love it so much. You get Belle being spooked by Naza, and actually, during this scene, one thing they did omit is Naza, when she pats Belle on the head, calling him a crybaby when you see him like have tears in his eyes because there's actually people wanting to help him. Eyes, while she's watching Naza pat Belle on the head, she's actually like patting the air, trying to do the same thing that Naza is doing. And they also remove a little offhand comment that Naza says, where she states that Take's Familia is also helping. And I think they took that line out because they actually took out the scene with Oka and Chigusa and where they would be in this part of the novel. So I'm not sure if they're going to change their scene in some way in a future episode or not, or they're just going to be Mia for the rest of the season. And then we get to Aisha and Ryu talking to Belle, and I'm actually surprised they animated Ryu and Aisha fighting as much as they did. I was surprised by that. And the other thing, while all this is happening, it's not just Eyes that's watching this. There's actually other adventurers that are keeping their eye on Belle, and you can see that they're like all visibly jealous of all the girls that are meeting up with him. And then that just reaches a boiling point when Aina swoops in all angrily, and the other adventurers around the area like audibly whisper, "Again?" And that line where Aina questions Belle if she's just a convenient woman to him works a lot better when there's a lot more people around to hear it as well. But regardless, it's still really funny. And you can see Eyes progressively getting more and more interested in what's going on, because originally she's standing up and watching, and she gradually moves into like putting her arms around her legs and just kind of like chilling and sitting while watching Belle meet up with all the girls. And the interesting thing is the subtitles for the scene where Eyes calls Belle a delinquent. That's what the Crunchyroll subs are. The High Dive subs are calling Belle a playboy, which I think fits the context a lot better than delinquent. That makes more sense to me. In the light novel, it was translated as jerk, but I think playboy is my favorite translation out of all of those because it just fits the context of Belle beating up with 4 different women a lot better. And last week, I said they might show the conversation between Loki and Hestia as a flashback, because that's what they did in the novel. They did not adapt it here in the episode, so they're probably just not going to adapt it at all. But basically with that conversation between Loki and Hestia is Hestia actually explains the entirety of the Xenos situation to Loki in hopes that she'll cooperate with her. And Loki says she won't be able to, and even if she did want to, Finn would not allow that, because Finn has his own goals. He's trying to restore people's opinion of his race because they are often seen as small and not impressive. And Finn also does not want to disrupt Aurario's order. And Loki actually mentions that Finn has an idea of what the Xenos' true nature is, but he's not telling the rest of the Familia because he doesn't want them to hesitate. Because if they fight and they have these feelings about the Xenos, they might get hurt because of that hesitation. And that's why it's also explained that if the other adventurers, like everyone in Aurario, were to know about the existence of the Xenos, again, that would cause hesitation. Some adventurers would question if killing monsters was right, because a lot of Aurario's infrastructure relies on getting the magic stones from the dungeon by killing tons of monsters. And Loki tells Hestia that she won't mention any of this conversation to Finn. She just wants to watch how the events unfold. And then we have this scene with Leto calling out the location of the other Xenos. Right before that happens, I really like seeing Gross kind of dote on Wine. It's very cute. But this is also another change in where a lot of the changes start happening with the second half of the episode. When Leto gives out that signal, they only get a response from 2 of the Xenos, which is Fia, the red-haired harpy, and also Let, which is the goblin that wears the red cap. they did not actually get a response from Araru, which is the Almirage, the rabbit-like creature, and Helga, which is the hellhound that Araru rides. Those two were actually somewhere else, and I'll explain that where it's involved in the novel. And then that's when they choose to insert the Freya and Ritaro scene I mentioned last week, where Freya has some sort of plan and asks Otaro to carry it out. And now we have Lily using her Cinderella magic to disguise herself as a Xenos, Araru in particular disguising herself as a Almirage to distract the adventurers, make them chase her. This is a very dangerous operation, by the way, because Lily's only level 1, and you'd imagine some of the adventurers chasing her are potentially level 2, maybe 3. So it's kind of a dangerous thing. That's why she kind of curses Fells towards the end of this. And poor Fells, he keeps getting bullied during this entire season. And just as some extra clarification for Lily's magic, she can only disguise herself as something that's similar in size to her or smaller. And then we have Naza that's using those magic items, those magic flowers that Belle gave to her, to put hallucinations on the adventurers so they're all distracted. And then, of course, we have Ryu getting in the way of Eyes. And when I first read this part in the novel, I was super hyped because, oh my lord, this is going to be crazy. Ryu, my favorite character, going up against Eyes. And obviously Ryu is at a disadvantage even with the level boost from Haruhime, because even with that, she's originally level 4, that only boosts her to level 5, and Eyes is level 6. So Ryu is still in a bit of a pickle even if she can delay Eyes a tiny bit. And besides Ryu being my favorite character, it just shows the degree of trust that Belle has towards her, because not only does he trust Ryu to delay Eyes, he trusts Ryu with the knowledge of Haruhime's level boost, because that's something they're trying to keep secret, but he straight up tells Ryu to get that level boost from Haruhime to fight against Eyes. And Omori Sensei, the author of the light novels, actually posted a comment on Twitter. He does this about every week. I just wanted to highlight this one because part of it is like repeating stuff I've said last episode, where he says, like, due to the scale of the content, a lot of episode 10 is kind of altered to fit within the season. And he says, like, please read the original novel if you want to know more, which is basically exactly what I said last week. Like, same energy, Omori Sensei, same energy. If you want like the full picture, definitely pick up the novel. And the other part to that post by Omori Sensei is a picture of a younger Eyes and a younger Ryu who have fought previously. And this was 7 years ago in terms of the DanMachi timeline. And this is actually all part of a scenario in the DanMachi mobile game Memoria Freze. And it's part of the 3rd anniversary event called Astrea Record. And it's canon because Omori Sensei wrote it and basically called it a supplement to the main story. But it tells of the struggles against the evils in Rario 7 years ago, and Astrea Familia is heavily featured, which is Ryu's old Familia, and in it at some point Ryu and Eyes clash. So definitely check that out. You don't even have to actually get the mobile game. You could just go to the video description and I'll link a playlist which has a fully voiced event of the entirety of Astrea Record uploaded by YouTuber Mëdiocre. So if you're curious about the Arario from 7 years ago, or just Ryu's past in general along with a younger Eyes, Loki Familia, Freya Familia, definitely check it out. And I really hope it becomes an anime at some point. Like after this, I would not want to go straight into season 4 because we catch up to the light novel material really quickly. And due to what happens in the arc after the Xenos arc, I think Astrea Record being animated beforehand would actually work really well. And now we're really getting into a lot of where the changes and alterations are, a lot of which are involving just Loki Familia in general. So we get to the scene where Finn gets to notice that Eyes has lost track of Belle because she's being delayed, and he says not to worry too much about Belle because he's really just a distraction and to keep formation. And one order they omitted is Finn actually saying to start moving Tione's group towards the west. And then we transition to Raoul. And for context on Raul, he is a level 4 adventurer, so he's actually technically stronger than Bell, but he's known to be like this average and plain looking guy. His name, his title is the High Novice because the gods like kind of mock of how average and how plain he looks. He lacks a lot of self-esteem, and he looks up to Finn as a type of idol. And a lot of the stuff here is kind of changed with how Lily like tricks Raul and the context behind it. When Lily comes in disguised as Finn, her original order to Raul is to take his group south to where Eyes is to intercept the main group of monsters that were spotted along with a Minotaur. And because of the distractions that Belle and Lily were making towards the south of Daedalus Street, there is like fighting going on, but a lot of that is like the hallucinations that Naza provided, as well as the uproar that Lily was making because of her distracting everyone, disguising herself as a Xenos. And instead, they have Lily tell Raul to go back to central headquarters, which it's a really weird like alteration in my mind, because Lily basically just told Raul to go straight to where Finn is, the person that she is impersonating. So from like an anime only like frame of mind, I don't think that makes too much sense for Lily to recommend doing. So really weird, though I think it's because they wanted to get Raul to where Finn is a lot faster, because Raul does talk to like the actual Finn later on. And the novel actually gets into why Lily targets Raul specifically. Basically, there's a lot of information on Loki Familia and its members because they're so popular. And she singled Raul out because he is known to have like low self-esteem and be gullible, just like Belle, as she mentions here in this episode. And another thing for anime onlys, like I explained this in my Before You Watch Season 3 video, but Lily and Finn have met prior to this and had an extended conversation, and I explained in that video a lot of stuff was skipped from Volume 8, and I explained in that video when Finn and Lily previously met, Finn actually had a marriage proposal to Lily, which she did obviously decline, but during that conversation, Lily was able to like see what Finn's character was, what his mannerisms were, and that's why she's able to successfully like trick Raul into thinking that she is Finn, because she is doing her best to act like Finn. And they kind of make Raul look like a complete fool. Like he honestly is in this scene in the novel too, but he at least like somewhat questions what's happening with these orders from Finn, because when Lily like asked for the location of their positionings around Knossos, he was like, wait, why do you want to know that? And Lily like breaks him off with confidence and a strong tone, like, I'm wondering about something's bothering me. And then when Lily leaves, Raul like is still going to follow those orders that he was given, but he does start to question like, wait a minute, why didn't Finn have his spear? And during all of this, Mikoto and Welf are grouped up with the Xenos, and they're slowly making their way through Daedalus Street, and they're like stealthily taking out adventurers, like moving the bodies away, and then using the hidden passages that they're able to navigate because of that map that Hestia has. And again, Raul does not immediately go to where Finn is located as per Lily's orders in the anime, but when Finn gets like the word that Raul's forces are moving south, he questions what is going on, and then he realizes something. He makes a connection to something he saw during the war game, and he immediately thinks of the tactic that Lily used to confuse everyone when she disguised herself as Luan. So Finn is able to draw that connection, and he kind of realizes that they gotta move up on him. He says he's foolish for just focusing on Belle and not giving Lily enough credit. But Finn has been keeping this mental note that also there should only be one main Xenos force, because he suspects they only have access to one or two keys, so it makes more sense to have a bigger main monster group. And because that main Xenos group with Welf and Mikoto was spotted in the west, Finn gives the order for Tione's group to intercept and start this pincer attack, and this doesn't happen in the anime. Originally, Tiona and Tione were supposed to fight against Welf and Mikoto, but of course, the anime omitted that, probably because, again, only 12 episodes, can't adapt everything. And after Finn gives those orders, Loki shows up and basically tells Finn to only believe what he sees with his own eyes, and that's when Finn asks for someone to bring him Raoul so he can question him. And now we get to that part I mentioned was skipped involving Take's Familia. Chigusa and Oka are in this scene, and basically they're helping evacuate a lot of the people that are still in Daedalus Street, and one of those people are the orphans I mentioned last episode, who were introduced in Volume 8, the skip content from Volume 8. So Oka and Chigusa actually meet them, and the orphans beg them to look for Rue, which is the half-elf child who went back to the church to look for a cat. And of course it's dangerous over there, but Chigusa and Oka don't know the way to get there because Daedalus Street is almost like this maze of a street. So the caretaker of the orphanage, Maria, says she will guide Chigusa and Oka to where the church is so they can go ahead, find Rue, and escort him out of the area. But Fina and Lai, the two other kids who are asking them to help, want to come along with, and Oka can't help but allow them to because he connects with these orphans, because Oka himself, Chigusa, and Mikito were all orphans and raised by Take, so he can't help but relate. So that's what they're doing. And then there's another scene that was omitted from the anime, which involves Cassandra, and she's carrying this huge box and acting all worried. What's in the box is Aoru, the Almirage Xenos, and Helga, the Hellhound Xenos. And she's carrying them and trying to like bring them to safety. And Daphne actually finds Cassandra and wonders what the heck's going on. The box ends up opening, and then the two Xenos pop out, and Daphne wants an explanation from Cassandra, and she basically says she had this vision that she needed this rabbit charm to protect her from this jet black wave. And that's when Daphne steps in and points her weapon towards the Xenos, and then Asterius appears behind them, and he's about to swing his weapon towards Daphne and Cassandra, and they think they're doomed. And of course the two Xenos that Cassandra was taking care of, Aoru and Helga, like tell Asterius like, oh, no, stop, they're cool, and they basically group up with Asterius and they make off on their way. And Cassandra's like, see, I told you they'd save us, because Asterios is pitch black. So that was her vision, that the rabbit charm, which is referencing Aoru, the Almirage rabbit-like creature, saving them from Asterius. But Daphne points out, like, hey, we wouldn't need saving if we didn't take care of these two in the first place. So it kind of stinks those two scenes were taken out, because a lot of the reason why I like this arc so much is because of all the characters that are involved in it. And personally, I think that's one of DanMachi's strongest traits. One of my favorite parts about DanMachi is the attention to all the characters, and unfortunately, the anime just omits and alters a ton of that to fit it within this 12 episode window, and it's just very, very unfortunate, because I think that's just one of the draws of DanMachi in general. And Asterius has been plowing his way through adventurers, not killing them, but really injuring them. And along with Aoru and Helga, he also picks up Fia, the Harpy, and also Let, and he's basically kind of like escorting them along their way through Daedalus Street. And at one point, he gives his Daedalus Eye, his key, to Let, because he says he doesn't need it anymore, because what he's dreaming for, that fight that he always dreams of happening, he thinks it's going to happen here on this surface. So he says he has no need for this. And the four scattered Xenos, Fia, Let, Aoru, and Helga, make off on their way towards the rest of the Xenos. And the very end of the episode kind of paints Tiona in this very negative light, because she's like all happy to go against Wine. And the thing is, before she gets those orders from Finn to move to West Street, she has this scene with Tione, and she actually has these doubts about the Xenos, but before she can voice them to Tione, they get the order to move on to West Street and then confront the main force of Xenos along with Welf and Mikoto. and that's when that main force is going in, charging straight for the Gnosis entrance. And you see that fire blast that's directed towards Gross, and he blocks it with his right wing. I think that's supposed to be like a light reference to one of the things that happens when Tione and Tiona were originally supposed to fight against them, because Tione throws one of her knives towards the Xenos, and Gross blocks it with his wing, but actually shatters a lot of his wing because, again, it's made of stone, and Tione has level 6 strength. So we have Welf and Mikoto shrouded under the invisibility reverse veil that Fels provides, using Welf's magic swords to basically freeze the archers in place and make them immobile. And Mikoto mentions in like this offhand comment that this way they can minimize damage. What she's saying is that like the element that Welf chose to make wasn't like fire or lightning, which would cause a ton of damage to the city and seriously injure people. He chose to use ice because it's not really going to damage anything, and it's just going to immobilize people instead. And when the Amazon twins advance towards the Xenos, Welf and Mikoto are on like both sides of them, and they try to aim the ice magic swords towards them, but Tione and Tiona are fast enough to react in time and just dodge out of the way. So Welf comes up with a plan, and they're going down this hill in the street, and Welf and Mikoto are basically going against Tiona, and Tiona just kind of spamming in the ice magic sword, trying to slow them down as the Xenos try to get away. And eventually reaches a point to where Mikoto has to use that wind blade you kind of see her use against Gareth later on in the episode, which she unsheathes the wind magic sword, and it actually blows Tiona and Tione sky high and away. So for the time being, they're out of the picture, literally. And then after that, the light novel transitions to Finn talking to Raoul, and then that's when he finds out that Lily asked about Loki Familia's position in regards to guarding the Gnosis entrances, and that's when Finn realizes there's not much of a point in guarding those 4 locations anymore. And then that's when Finn realizes there's not much of a point in heavily guarding those entrances anymore, because more than likely the enemy knows of a different entrance. And that's when he gives the order to take half of those forces guarding the entrances and use them as reinforcements to intercept the west side of Daedalus, where the main group of Xenos are with Welf and Mikoto. And he also mentions to also get Gareth. And then that's when you see him appearing from the sky in the anime, and then smashes down, basically blowing a ton of the Xenos out of formation. And here, this is how they decide to separate Wine from the rest of the Xenos. Though it's kind of weird, like, it's not that chaotic quite yet, because it's really just Gareth that's just there. So there's still time for like the Xenos to realize Wine is not with them and together. Because what originally happens is, again, Gareth comes crashing down, separates a lot of them, and then more and more reinforcements are actually coming in. And then that's when Fels realizes like they're all kind of scattered about, and Fels uses his black mist, that black smoke screen you saw in episode 8, to cover the entire area. And that's how Wine gets separated from the rest of the Xenos, and I think that makes a lot more sense than what they did here. Like, this kind of accomplishes the same thing, but I think it just makes more sense with how the light novel handled it. And now you have Welf and Mikoto going against Gareth, and hopefully they adapt the entire scene between them next episode, because I'm still sad they cut out the initial parts where they faced off against Tiona and Tione, and that also would have given some additional context to just how crazy strong Gareth is, because Welf and Mikoto were able to like immobilize Tione and Tiona pretty well with the ice, but you see Gareth just with sheer willpower just overpower that ice like it's almost nothing. But it's definitely not something any normal adventurer can do. And also, one very small detail, at one point Gareth is like fighting off against 10 of the Xenos, and he actually slices off the unicorn's horn in this scene. And the reason I even mention this is because that unicorn horn in particular becomes important due to something that happens in the next few novels, what would be a season 4. So if a certain item appears in season 4, that's where it came from. And then we have the episode end with Wine like making it out of the rubble and then seeing Tiona, and it's kind of similar to how it works in the novel where she actually does bump into Tiona, who has just kind of recovered from being blown sky high, and she just happened to come across Wine. And I imagine the scene between the two is going to be very different from how it is in the novel due to a certain thing, and I'll explain that next week probably. But yeah, that was episode 10. Again, I really enjoyed the first half, probably because it was a pretty fateful adaptation up until that point. Really fun just watching Eyes watch over Bell as he's meeting with Naza, Aisha, Ryu, and Aina, and Eyes getting visibly jealous. It's really funny. I really love that part in the novel, so it's cool to see that part animated. But yeah, towards the second half of the episode, they change and omit a lot of stuff. Again, a lot of it is due to the stuff that was skipped from Volume 8 during Season 2. And again, it's like I'm beating a dead horse talking about the episode limits, but it's also like a planning thing. Because I mentioned before that when Season 2 was greenlit, I think Season 3 was also already in the plans, because you don't just announce Season 3 as Season 2 ends, like off the cuff, like that was already within the plans. So if you know you're going to be adapting Season 3 and the contents in it, you would think you would adapt some of the stuff from Volume 8 that's kinda important in context to what happens in Season 3, and they have just been writing around it and outright skipping it. Like I mentioned, the scene with Finn and Lily when they were supposed to meet in Volume 8, but that never happened in Season 2. And also just the whole orphanage stuff with Seer. And man, it's just, you'd think they would have planned for that, because it's very likely that Season 2 and 3 were decided together. So it's like they didn't read the novels that would encompass Season 3 when they were making Season 2. I don't know how that production was handled, but we're gonna get what we're gonna get, and we're just gonna have to live with that. Like Amori Sensei says, if you want the full picture, go read the novel! And also, in the current DanMemo side story, there's always an little extra story weekly from the DanMachi mobile game, Memoria Freze. This time, it's not a skipped content, and I'm always iffy on this. Like, I hate it when they adapt skipped content into the mobile game, because it seems like a catch-all, like, oh, if we don't adapt it here, we can just always use the mobile game. This time, it's actually an extra scene, and it's the Xenos commentary on Bell's playboyness, so it's actually a funny one. Again, you can check that out by either actually getting the DanMachi mobile game or just clicking one of my links in the description below from the YouTuber Mëdiocre who uploads all that DanMemo stuff. But anyway, guys, I'm curious on how you felt about the episode. How did light novel readers feel about this one? Like, a lot of changes are being made to fit it within 12 episodes, and some of it doesn't make sense in my mind logically, like Lily telling Raoul to go to Finn, like, go to Central Headquarters, like, what? That's where Finn is. Why would you do that? Because you're trying to trick him. Whatever. Anyway, and also how anime onlys felt about this episode. Like, were you kind of not convinced about Lily being able to just mimic Finn's mannerisms perfectly? Or did that just not really matter to you? So comment down below with your thoughts. If you want to see more DanMachi content, go ahead, like the video, sub to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and join my Discord. And as always, continue enjoying your time adventuring Mario and the dungeon. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out. 渦を巻く甘く